Director Sofia Coppola brings to the screen, the big screen, the story of Priscilla Presley in a film entitled Priscilla, out now from A24. I am a big Elvis fan. I've read tons of stuff about Elvis. I've watched documentaries. I've watched movies. I've got the music. I'm just like been to Graceland 2 or 3 times. I'm a big Elvis fan, so I was very curious what this new big screen version of the book Elvis and Me that Priscilla Presley had written back, I think in the 80s, had to offer, because I remember there was a TV movie called Elvis and Me based on this that had, I don't remember who played Priscilla Presley, but it was Dale Midkiff, the father from Pet Sematary, played Elvis in that. And I remember that being pretty good and not the rosiest portrayal of the king, as it were. Not that I'm, under some delusion that he was, a god who walked among men and was the most wonderful person in the world. I know how flawed the man was. And seeing the trailer for this new film, Priscilla, I really wondered, is this going to be kind of a hit job on Elvis, making him out to be a terrible person and her the victim of his terribleness or what? And I thought this film was really well done. This was very, very well done. We have Cailee Spaeny, I may be mispronouncing that, as I tend to do with most people's names, as Priscilla Presley, and Australian actor Jacob Elordi as the man himself, as Elvis. And it's very well done. There's not a lot of fat on this film. It opens with the young Priscilla Beaulieu as a teenager, rather young teenager, who's in the servicemen's club because her father is stationed in Germany in the Air Force, and it's the same Air Force base that Elvis is stationed at. And one of Elvis's friends, they refer to him as a name that is sort of like the same last name as one of his cousins, who was one of his right-hand men, Memphis Mafia bodyguards, but it's a different first name, so I don't know if they changed that for legal reasons or what. But anyway, this guy sees her. He invites her to, with her parents' permission, of course, to a party at Elvis's house because Elvis misses home and he wants to hang out with people from America and all that. And she goes and she meets him, and the love affair begins. So it does address the whole, she was 14, he was considerably older than 14, not 20 years older than 14, but old enough that it seems like kind of a weird thing. It gets into that and how she was essentially, according to the way that Priscilla Presley herself portrays it, she was, in love with and enchanted by this amazing, very tender man who was very also, she didn't have him to herself quite so much. She kind of had to share him with the world and with his buddies and with the audience and with Hollywood and with touring and all this other stuff. And she sort of becomes, over the course of the film, this sort of kept object. She has to stay at home. She has to look pretty the way Elvis wants her to look. She has to be available for him when he's available, even though he can be unavailable to her a lot of the time. And it seemed to be a pretty accurate portrayal of the whole story from what I've read. I've actually not read her book. I really kind of want to read it again now. And I think it's been re-released, and I know there's an audio book version that's been recently released, and a sort of interest being renewed in this book that's several decades old because of this film. And so Sofia Coppola, who makes good movies, as far as I'm concerned, is good at making relatively small, quiet, interpersonal dramas, which is what this is. It really, as I say, there's not a lot of fat to this. It starts more or less the day they meet, and it ends the day she leaves Graceland. And I thought, not to give anything away, but I thought it ended a little abruptly. She basically announces, and again, I'm not trying to spoil anything. If you know me at all, I don't like to give away anything about a film, but this is kind of a historical document. She announces to Elvis that she's leaving him. She gets in the car, she drives through the gates of Graceland, and as she's about to leave the gates, film cuts to black and credits roll. And in the moment, I was like, well, that's it? But it makes sense. The film tells the story of Priscilla's relationship with Elvis, which, of course, continued after they divorced and he saw Lisa Marie, and there was some kind of relationship there. But as far as the story of Elvis and Priscilla, it ends when she drove out the gate. So that kind of artistically makes sense to me. One of my concerns with the film, other than how are they going to portray Elvis, and I thought it was fair flaws and all fair, but not like demonizing the guy, it was, do they get the details right? Because being a big fan, I see that stuff. And I've seen so many movies where it's set in the past and it's a famous person and they're like, we're going to pick that one haircut they had at one point in time, and that's going to represent that person's hair. It seems really petty. That's going to represent that person's hair for a decade or two. And I almost just like, they didn't look that way that year. This movie doesn't do that. Hair, makeup, clothes, sets, incredibly accurate. Like I said, I've been to Graceland several times and I know what the inside of the house looks like. It was recreated for this film. As far as I know, they did not shoot there, but it looks like Graceland. It looks close enough like Graceland. It's certainly a small film with a modest budget, but they make great use of that budget, and they don't, they don't try to fake it in ways that are cheesy and take you out of the film. They just keep it small and confined to mostly these two characters, with the peripheral people here and there. And occasionally, if you have a scene that's theoretically could be shot a lot grander, like Elvis performing in Vegas, you have him shot from behind, mostly in silhouette, so you just don't see the audience, and that sells it. That makes total sense to me. Or him, leaving at the airport in Germany to come back. You see a crowd of women, you see the car, you see him leaving. That's fine. It never felt like it was cheating or trying to, take shortcuts to me. It really was focusing on the drama and the two actors who were very good. The gentleman who plays Elvis, once again, Jacob Elordi, he doesn't look exactly like Elvis, and a lot of the time his head it's not done distractingly, but I did kind of notice a lot of time his face is a little bit in shadow. He's a little bit turned away. They're not always, giant close-ups of him. When they do, he looks close enough and he sounds close enough, and his voice is pretty darn good. And a lot of his mannerisms are really good as far as what I know of, the off-camera or the off-screen or the at-home Elvis and the way he acted with his friends. Not all of the casting is look-alike casting, and that's okay. I know what all these guys look like, and only maybe the Joe Esposito character kind of looks like the real Joe Esposito to a degree, and the rest, it's just a bunch of young guys who don't really look like the guys they're supposed to play, but that's fine because 99.9% of the audience doesn't know who these guys are anyway. Vernon Presley doesn't look like Vernon Presley, but he says, "Hi, I'm Vernon Presley," and as far as we're concerned, it's Vernon Presley. Otherwise, again, like I say, costumes from various movies, from various eras are perfect. And so often movies dance around that. And with recreation of album covers, of photos of 45 picture sleeves, it's all done with our actor as Elvis, but it looks at a distance, if you squint, or if I take my glasses off, I would swear it was the real thing. And that's cool. They don't really go into, this isn't the Baz Luhrmann Elvis movie where they had hundreds of millions of dollars in endless resources to work with, and that's okay. This is the opposite spectrum of that. If you want the glitzy, gigantic, mega Hollywood, way over the top version of the Elvis story, the Baz Luhrmann film is there, and I thought it was quite good. I thought it could calm down once in a while, and some of the anachronistic music it used, especially in the end credits, was pretty lame, but other than that, the Baz Luhrmann Elvis, I thought, was 99% exceptional, and the Priscilla, as portrayed by, or as given to us by Sofia Coppola, is really damn good. 99.9% exceptional, I would say, for this too. Really good drama. Maybe some surprises for people who don't know the Elvis story or the Elvis and Priscilla story very well. For me, I knew it pretty well, and there wasn't really much of a surprise. A couple little things here and there that I presume really happened. I didn't have a chance to look up to see any kind of historical accuracy meter on this film. One thing I will say is occasional anachronistic use of music. The opening song, you see close-ups of Priscilla, like, dolling herself up and getting ready to, like, go out or go to school or go to the servicemen's club or whatever, and it's the Ramones' "Baby I Love You" playing, which is a song from a decade plus after the film is set, or that moment in the film is set. And it took me out of it a little, but I love the Ramones. So it did put me in a good mood going into the film. And then later, after Priscilla first meets Elvis and she's back in school and she's sort of dazed and in love, Tommy James' "Crimson and Clover" starts playing, which again is a song that would not come out in the reality of the world of the film we're watching for several years. And I kind of wondered why do that, because there's so much a rich body of music, or even score you could put in. There's another time where the score is kind of a modern piece of music where I felt, why don't you just score it with something of the period or that sounds like the period and not kind of pull me out of the reality of this being the early 60s. That whenever there's Elvis music in the film, it's a sound alike, and that's fine. Sounds pretty much like Elvis. So it was really, really well done, and it's a really good drama, a really good character-based drama, excellent performances. If you're an Elvis fan, I think it's very much worth watching. It kind of makes me want to watch the old Elvis and Me TV movie again to see how that treated the same material, but I say it's a winner. Being someone who went in not with folded arms, but I went in like, oh, let's see how this goes. It won me over in a very short order, and I thought it was great. I wish it was longer. I wish it got into the story a little bit more, but it really did give a really good representation of the arc of their relationship together. And again, really not like photo accurate, but really good recreations of everything about the era and how these people looked and how these people carried themselves. I quite enjoyed Priscilla.